Okay, I'm just trying to get everybody in here. Everybody have a nice weekend?
It was okay. I worked.
I did too. Okay, just trying to wait to see who else is going to come in, and then we'll get started. I am recording.
Are we doing the quiz?
I have some good news about that. Hang tight. Not right now. Okay, I think we're just waiting for two more
Thank
people.
God for that. Not right now.
I have an update that I think you'll be happy about.
I do too.
Suspense is killing me.
Who's talking?
Telling the truth.
Who's talking?
This is Pamela.
Pamela.
Hi.
No, I'll tell you about that. Okay, I'm just waiting for one more person, so I'm gonna get going. There were a lot of questions around quizzes in all classes. And so Dean Brown gave the professors the ability to decide when during class time we wanted to give our quizzes. But it had to be consistent with all the sections. So I got with my two teammates and we decided that we would like to be able to present our content, and then we would give the quiz after that. How do you guys feel about that?
Sounds good to me.
I can't, last week stands because that's what we had decided, or we were instructed to do at the beginning of the term, but we now have some flexibility. And we think that presenting the content and then giving the quiz would be better. However, the reminder is you cannot come to class unprepared. Right? So that's not the reason we're doing it that way. I think if you come to class prepared and then we review the content, that's kind of double dipping, right? And you should be better prepared. Sound good? Okay. So what are we covering this week?
Homeless.
Migrant
workers.
farm workers, rural population,
Rural populations, yeah.
rural populations.
Poverty.
Great.
Migrant workers.
Yeah. And again, can you see how all the topics we're covering this week fit into community health? It's a lot. It covers a lot, doesn't it? Community health is a huge umbrella, involves many, many parts of the community, populations of the community. So what I'd like to do today is just review a couple of housekeeping items. Then I'm going to review your week 3 notes, which is your content, okay? Because we spent a lot of time several terms ago putting together weekly notes for you, which are summaries of all the topics being covered, okay? And then I would like to take the quiz. If time permits, I have a Jamboard that Professor Kershaw put together. We're trying to do the same activities every week in all the sections. So Professor Kershaw put together a Jamboard about the topics we're covering this week. So I'd like to get to that if we can. And I think that should fill our time. What do you think about that? Great, great, great. The discussion questions that you guys have done over weeks 1 and 2 are excellent. I haven't graded the second week, but I've looked through them. Okay, you guys did a fabulous, fabulous job. And the reason, think of both discussion questions you did. Week 1 was a vulnerable population. Week 2 was picking some common childhood ailments. As you can see, if you have had a chance to open it yet, I sent you guys the study guide for exam 1. Okay, it's pretty extensive. However, it's an excellent summary of what we're covering over the first 3 weeks. So my suggestion would be that you start with the study guide. Now we haven't, after today, everything on all the topics on the study guide should be introduced to you. Does that make sense? Okay, 2/3 of it we've already covered, but the last third we're going to cover today. So at the end of this class, what I would suggest you do, when you have a minute to open the study guide, I would start with the study guide for studying for the test. Okay, if you come across topics or concepts on the study guide that you don't have a good understanding of from lecture, from the notes you take, from the notes we give you every week, and from the readings, then I would suggest you go back and do some research on your own, okay? If you can understand and articulate the point, and I know the study guide's long, but it's also 3 weeks worth of information. Okay, so start there. Don't go back and reread every chapter. Don't go back and reread everything. Start with the study guide. Okay, if you have a good understanding of the study guide and can put that knowledge into practice, clinical practice, you will ace the exam. I promise you. Okay, so don't overdo it. I guess that's what I'm saying.
So you're suggesting that we should study the study guide.
You use the study guide as a starting point. If there are things, topics, concepts you don't understand on the study guide, then go back to your lectures, your reading, the notes to get a better understanding. Okay. If at the end of studying and I'm expecting that you do your due diligence and prepare for the exam, and you guys will be taking the exam a week from today. So if by the end of the week, you're not grasping certain topics or certain concepts, and you've gone through the study guide, you've gone back to your readings, notes, lectures, whatever, then reach out to me and we'll do some tutoring. Okay. I'm happy to tutor you before the exam. But what I'd like to do is targeted tutoring before exams, meaning going through certain topics that you're just not getting, that you're not understanding. Make sense? But that study guide is a good study guide. It's a really good study guide. Okay. What do you guys have for this week? Is this week your NCLEX? You have your first NCLEX, week 3. And then we have quiz 2. Those are our 2 things for this week, right? Okay. All right, I'm going to share my screen and we're going to start and we're going to go through the week 3 notes. Okay. This also is the week for review sessions. Okay, all 3 of us, Professor Ford, Professor Kershaw, and myself are all doing live reviews. You all have the schedule. I can't remember. I think that Professor Ford's may be tonight. Okay, she always does hers on Mondays. So check that. She does her review tonight. I'm doing mine Wednesday, I believe. And then I think Professor Kershaw does hers on Thursday. So if you can attend a live review this week, please try. You know, I say this all the time, but attending live reviews does produce higher grades on the exam.
On Wednesday, what time are you doing on?
Nicole, I'd have to go. Can anybody pull up the announcement that has all the review sessions, including the HESI for the whole term? That's why we sent it out early so that you could plan ahead. Let me know when somebody has that. It would have been like exam review schedule.
Okay.
You want to know when you're doing yours?
Yeah, do you have it pulled up? Is Professor
Yes.
Ford's tonight?
Yeah.
Thursday, the 27th for exam 1 is Professor Crenshaw.
So
Mrs.
Thursday.
Marvel,
Yep.
Mrs. Marvel is doing hers Wednesday, the 26th. And Mrs. Ford is doing hers Monday, the 24th. So it's today at 7
Tonight.
p.m.
Tonight.
Yeah, at 7 p.m. Yes.
Yep.
And
So-
Mrs. Marvel is doing hers on Wednesday at 12 p.m.
Is that it? Did you find it at the announcement?
Mhm.
Is that
Yes.
Central or Eastern time?
Everything is Eastern time.
Eastern,
Okay.
yes.
There's
And
an
you can-
announcement.
Under that announcements, it says exam review schedule, HESI for the term, something like that.
And you have all the review sessions for exam 1, 2, 3, and HESI reviews,
HESI, yep.
all in that
Right.
document. And we did it all together so you could plan ahead.
You can go to more than one, right?
Oh, you can go to
Mhm.
as many as you want. And the other thing is we share our recordings. Okay, so you'll have my recording obviously from Wednesday, but I will also share the other 2 professors' reviews with you, so you'll have 3 recordings. Okay? Okay. Any questions about housekeeping? I'll get your groups to you this week too for your week 7 group project, your infectious disease project. I'll get those groups to you this week, and I'll do my best to keep groups within the same campuses so that you can work together on campus if you would like to. Okay, would that help? Okay. All right, let's talk about rural and migrant health. What's rural health? What do you think rural health is? And why is it part of community nursing?
Rural health is like small communities without access to some of the things that bigger cities, offer.
Mhm. What kind of setting could a rural community be? Farm,
Yeah, farm.
agriculture, industrial, village?
Yeah.
Say that again?
Like construction, like where they're building stuff?
Well, rural or
Not
smaller,
really.
rural is small
Mhm.
areas. Okay. Rural populations, rural communities are going to have much less resources than the big urban areas, right? They maybe have a family practice doctor who covers a couple of counties. They don't have specialized care, right? So if you're a high risk OBGYN, if you need an oncologist, if you need a neurosurgeon, cardiologist, you're probably going to be traveling to the next big city, right? We know that rural populations are very, very vulnerable. Okay. And I'm just reading here from your notes. All right. Many of the residents are younger than 18 and older than 65. Okay. They tend to have less formal education with far few college degrees. Okay. And more than 25% of rural Americans live in poverty or live at or near the poverty line. And the sad statistic is that 40% of rural kids are impoverished. Most are at-risk kids, single parent families, especially female heads of household. A lot of them lack insurance or don't have adequate insurance. Okay, and they work in much more high-risk occupations, mining, farming, agriculture. Okay, one of the biggest issues with rural population is they do not prioritize their primary health. Does that make sense? Therefore, when we finally do get to see them, they're typically sicker and at a more advanced stage of an illness or a disease. Okay, they do not participate in preventative activities. Okay, they're more likely to smoke, have higher rates of alcohol abuse, obesity, and they're much less likely to engage in screenings and wellness visits, like blood pressure checks, cholesterol checks, mammograms, pap smears. And they're a much higher risk to have chronic diseases. Okay, heart disease, COPD, hypertension, diabetes. Okay. So we know that rural residents, rural adults tend to have poorer health, less likely to seek medical care, less likely to have health insurance, and certainly have access to fewer physicians. And this is really interesting. About 10%, only 10% of US doctors work in the rural areas. When they do get sick, they have much more difficulty maintaining independence because a couple of reasons. The distances they may have to travel to get various services or go to other hospitals or institutions for services. A really big barrier in rural health is transportation. Big barrier, transportation. Okay, a lot of jobs in the rural health communities don't come with paid time off. They don't come with vacation time. They're typically hourly or daily wages. So they are much less likely to take a day off and travel to the next big city to get care, right? So they don't want to lose their day. They don't want to lose a payday. The other thing about rural populations is that they have a higher infant and maternal and infant morbidity rates, especially with poor physician coverage. They typically lack a pediatrician or an obstetrician. You're usually with a family physician. And so if you are high risk OB, you're going to be traveling. The other, another issue with rural populations is the higher rates of depression. stress-related conditions, especially if a good majority of them are living in poverty. Some of the high-risk industries, we talked about some of them, but forestry, mining, and agriculture. They have a high risk for health risks, right? Maybe using certain kinds of machinery, higher risk for accidents, trauma, cancer, allergies, chronic illnesses, birth defects. This is all in your notes. One of the big issues with, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was gonna say, most polluted plants are often set up in a rural society. So, I mean,
Yep.
it's just obvious that, we get like cancers and stuff like that, because I'm from a rural country, so I mean, city, so I can relate.
Mhm. Yeah. That's exactly right. One of the biggest risks for farm workers is pesticide exposure. If you're asked a question about what is the biggest risk to farm workers, the primary answer is pesticide exposure. Some other risks for them are heat and sun exposure, using hazardous tools, machinery, certainly infectious disease, communicable diseases, maybe some musculoskeletal injuries if they're lifting all day, respiratory illnesses, skin disorders, eye injuries. We talked about high rates of depression and neuro problems such as Parkinson's due to all the chemical exposures, right? And then kids that are living on farms have very similar health risks, right? Families living near farms may be exposed to pesticides and herbicides that are carried in on the wind, soaking into their water wells. Okay, I'd like for you to focus on this right here. Please know what pesticide exposure may present with. Okay, you're going to get asked about that. So please know about pesticide exposure. What's a migrant farm worker? What's a migrant?
People that go just to work for the season, farming, and then they kind of just like put together the money and they survive on that money during the winter time where they don't have that farming.
Well, if you're a rural nurse working in a rural community that has lots of migrants, you're going to be responsible for that population as well. How much do you know about migrants? Okay, Alishka, you're right. They come to the US to work for a season, then go back home, right? They're also moving around a lot.
You see a lot of the Hispanics doing that, especially
Mhm.
because if they don't like the cold, they come for like the summer, fall
Mhm.
time. They
Mhm.
work, keep sending money to their countries.
Yep.
And then once the season is done and it starts to get cold and like, whatever job they're doing, it starts to decrease, they decide to just go back. And most of
Absolutely.
them, they're undocumented too, so they get paid under the table.
Well, that's part of the barriers that migrant workers face. We'll talk about that here in a second. They typically don't know what services are available to them. They're always moving around. Language barriers, cultural barriers. They typically don't have any private vehicles. And typically, female migrant workers have a much higher risk of sexual harassment or abuse. And then what about the kids? The migrant kids working alongside their parents. Think of all the risks to them. Chemicals, pesticides, bodily injury, sun exposure. And we do know that our food supply in the United States would collapse without the work done by migrant. Do you guys see that? Do you guys understand that? And agree with that? 2 to 3 million of these workers at our farms seasonally get the food to the market. They typically, like the rural communities, don't have workers' compensation, don't have disability, don't have health benefits, don't have retirement benefits, don't have vacation days. Right? And when they arrive at the farm or wherever they're going to go work, they may find that there's issues with housing, may not be available, maybe substandard, maybe lack of sanitation, mold.
I've seen and know people that come in seasons and they get like a 2-bedroom apartment and you got like 20 or 30 of them living in that one, that 2-bedroom apartment, like just everyone like on the floor, or they got a bunch of bunk beds, like even the kitchen has beds, like and they only share a bathroom. Like sanitation, like speaking, I can only imagine how it is like having so much people in just one apartment at a time, because all of them were working in the same place.
Well, think
But-
about the risks of that.
Exactly.
Just poor sanitation, right? Contributes to spread of TB, GI issues, hepatitis. Right? Migrants, high risk for diabetes, poor dental health, obesity, depression. And then the kids at high risk for malnutrition, also infectious and communicable diseases. And probably have very inadequate immunization statuses. Have a constant disruption of their schooling and social life due to the constant mobility and moving around. Okay, there is what we call a Migrant Health Act. Okay, it provides primary and supplemental health services for migrant workers, including outreach clinics. Okay. But the one thing to remember about migrant workers, one of the other barriers for them, I know it's mobility, moving around, or maybe a language or cultural barrier, but one of the other big barriers for migrants seeking healthcare is immigration status. They don't want to raise any red flags, right? So that's a summary of migrant and farm workers. Poverty and homelessness. Right before COVID-19, the percentage of Americans living in poverty was its lowest since it had been since 1959. The poverty was at 10.5%. After COVID, it climbed to 17.3%. Okay, I saw this firsthand in the schools. Pre-COVID, post-COVID. Lots of things happened during COVID with regards to parents' employment, parents having to quit their jobs to stay home with young children. I saw lots of families go from not being homeless to being homeless. When everybody finally started showing up for school again, it was incredible. The surge in homelessness, family homelessness. Okay. Poverty. Poverty is defined by the federal government, right? We've all heard about poverty guidelines, poverty level, at the poverty level, above the poverty level, below the poverty level. Okay. These notes give you some figures, financial figures. Don't worry. I mean, you can read through it, but do not worry about all the numbers. I just want you to know how poverty is defined. Okay, it's defined by the federal government for purposes of qualification and tracking. Okay. And what do we mean when we say poverty? It means having insufficient resources to meet the family's needs, basic needs. What are the basic needs we're talking about? Food, shelter, transportation, and healthcare. Those are the 4 basic needs. What contributes to poverty?
Can you repeat those?
Oh, they're right here.
Um,
It's right here.
Okay.
Right there. Insufficient resources to meet your basic needs. Basic needs are considered food, shelter, transportation, and healthcare. I just highlighted it for you. What contributes to poverty? Many things. Unemployment, loss of retirement benefits when a company closes or files for bankruptcy. Employees lose their retirement funds. The risk of poverty is increased in female head households. Also with an inadequate education job training. Weak enforcement of child support statutes. Outsourcing of American jobs. And certainly the increase in the number of children born to single women. And the reason why we talk about all these kind of sad, this is part of community health. This is who's living in the community. These are who you're going to be working with. Individuals in poverty, families in poverty, individuals that are homeless, families that are homeless. A big chunk of the populations we work with in the community are vulnerable populations. Okay. Poverty, what does it lead to? What can it lead to? Chronic stress, mental health issues, high rates of chronic illness, higher infant morbidity and mortality, shorter life expectancy. Okay. Have a look at this paragraph here. Talks about what poverty leads to. Okay, poverty also leads to the inability to pay for healthcare, lack of insurance, living in areas where healthcare is unavailable or being able to not afford it. Typically, low-paying jobs do not provide health insurance. And then this is important, young children. Okay, this is really important. Young children are at the highest risk for the effects of poverty. Think about it. Maybe inadequate nutrition, poor brain development, exposure to toxins, trauma, abuse, low quality daily care. You know, when I was working in the schools, sometimes the only meals these kids got was breakfast before school and lunch during school. The more they have more, children have more chronic diseases, more nutritional deficiencies, more growth and development delays, higher incidences of lead levels, more infections. And then they're usually stuck in a poverty cycle themselves, right? Due to decreased opportunities in education, right? And then we know that poor teens are more likely to have below average academic skills, 3 times more likely to drop out of school, higher rates of teen pregnancy, more likely to suffer complications with pregnancy due to maybe lack of prenatal care, low birth weight babies, premature babies, babies born with birth defects, right? Then we talk about homelessness. What might lead, I mean, think about it. Think about driving around your community. I'm guessing that probably every community at this point has a homeless population. Probably some larger than others, depending on what state you live in, what city you live in. when you drive by a homeless encampment, or you're driving off the highway or road and you have panhandlers at every light on every corner, what do you think? What's your first reaction? What do you,
They must be hungry.
Honestly, I think that if you have enough strength to stand there and hold a sign, you should be somewhere working, but maybe they don't have like
The resources.
the educational work or whatever. But if you can be there every day at that time, you should be able to be on a job every day at that time. That's just my feeling.
I think about the
Portion of
circumstances.
people who are in that
There's
position though
places-
don't have mental health. Like they're
There's-
not just there because they don't have a job. There's a reason they can't hold down a job and that they got there to begin with. And once you get there, it's hard to get back out.
Well, that's true too.
There's also places like staffing agencies that if you are willing to work, they have transportation
Mhm.
resources also.
Right, but like a very large majority of people who are homeless have mental
Mental, yeah.
instability. So
Correct,
they can't hold down those jobs anyway.
correct.
and that's what we're
And
gonna
there's
talk
also,
about. Oh, go ahead.
A lot of veterans that's there, and I feel like that the country itself should be responsible for supplying their needs instead of having them standing on a corner begging for something, and they been doing everything for this country. I feel like those are our veterans and everything they need instead of begging, people for it.
Mm-hmm,
That's just my opinion.
mm-hmm.
I think
Um,
about the circumstances in which they are out there having to do that. And like,
Mhm.
I think Rachel said that, a lot of it is mental health, a lot of the mental health are, with the veterans.
Right.
Yeah,
Therefore, they should be taken care of.
high rate of mental instability problems.
Homelessness
Yeah.
is a issue in every community, and quite a bit of you did your vulnerable populations discussion, week 1 discussion on homelessness. It's a very important topic to talk about, to discuss, to find out, or to, as nurses, especially working in the community, how can we help this population? Okay, most homeless people didn't ask to be there. Okay, so what might lead to homelessness? Maybe unemployment. Maybe they can't afford to
No,
rent.
it's
They've lost access to their health care. Do they have a chronic disability? Do they have an acute or chronic mental illness?
drugs.
Drugs, right? Substance abuse leads to job loss or financial difficulties. Domestic violence, right? Women leave violent relationships without the support they need to stay off the streets, and they often have kids in tow, right? And interestingly, homelessness includes those living on the street, but homelessness is also defined of those staying with friends or relatives, staying in temporary shelters, staying in institutions where they have nowhere to be discharged to. We found this a lot in the schools once people came back from COVID. Yes, they were, maybe they were living with their sister, or living with the parents or whomever. But if you did not have a stable place to stay, you were considered homeless, right? Some individuals have intermittent homelessness, right? It's really hard to accurately estimate the number of homeless individuals. And then with regards to the homeless population, think of all the risks. They're exposed to the elements of the weather, crowded, unsanitary living conditions. We've all seen the pictures. Malnutrition, lack of sleep, chronic stress, much more likely to abuse alcohol and substances, serious mental illnesses.
Heat strokes, frostbite,
Yep,
scabies.
exactly. TB, skin infestations, chronic illnesses, victims of crime, and trauma. is typically a major cause of death and disability. Gunshot wounds, stab wounds, head trauma, suicide attempts, fractures. And here, this is incredible. The average life expectancy of a homeless individual is 44, as opposed to 78. Yep. And so this is why I asked you the question at the beginning of this section. As nurses, I asked how you feel about it. As nurses, it's vital that we respect the individuality of every person. Right? Many factors contribute to homelessness, and many of us are 2 paychecks away from being able to maintain our own housing.
You're right.
Right? It's easy to stereotype, but odds are we're going to be wrong in the process, right? Destroy any chance of a therapeutic relationship with a vulnerable, homeless individual or family. We can't make assumptions. We need to let them tell their story. Learn who they are, how they got there. Right? One of the we talk about therapeutic communication. I'm sure you've talked about this in all your other classes. Therapeutic communication is critical in the community setting. You know, if you've got a mom with kids that are living on the street or in shelters, you've got to be able to establish trust. Right? They're not going to open up and talk to you about what their needs are. Okay. So let's go through a couple of examples of examples in the different prevention levels of what we can do to help these populations: farm workers, migrants, homelessness, people living in poverty. So some primary preventions. Teach ways to, okay, this is for the farm workers. Teach ways to avoid pesticide exposure, right? They haven't been exposed yet. So one of the our primary intervention is teaching them ways to prevent exposure. Maybe advocate for childhood immunizations in migrant and farm children. Advocate for better living conditions for rural migrant farm workers. Right? So, so that is primary. Secondary screening, right? Maybe this looks like it's from the poverty section: screening for evidence of financial instability, especially with those with chronic health conditions, right? Maybe we're screening for blood pressure, glucose, BMI, educating on the importance of screenings, cancer screenings, pap smears, colonoscopies, mammography, HIV screenings, okay? And then tertiary, remember, that's treatment or management. They have to have something, condition, disease, event that's happened, right? So helping them manage whatever's going on. You know, maybe it's providing guidance on non-pharmacologic management of back pain, helping a homeless client find and apply for resources, right? Referring somebody to the health department for treatment of an STD. Teaching clients in the community how to take their medication. Okay, does that make sense? We have to start having a good understanding of primary, secondary, tertiary. There are several questions on each exam about those. Okay. So those are your notes. What questions do you guys have? Does that go along with your readings from this week? Okay.
Yeah, and I found them a little bit more direct and more detailed on how to understand the concepts.
Good, good, good. Okay, let's take our exam. Quiz. Guys want to take your quiz? What time is it? It is, what time is it? 3:45?
Yeah,
So let's take 15 minutes. from 3:45 to 4 o'clock. If you get done early, you want to go take a break, that's fine. Stay signed on. But if you need to shut your if you're done early and you want to shut your camera up, that's fine. But finish your quiz and be back at 4, and don't forget to submit it.
So do the quiz now?
Yeah.
Okay.
Are we all good with doing the quiz now? And then we'll go over it right after you take it. Okay. I'm going to mute myself.
Can we start?
Yeah, start. How we all doing? Anybody still working on it? Okay, I'll be quiet. I'll mute myself so I don't talk. Okay, I have about 4 of you that haven't submitted it yet, so finish up. If you don't mind. Okay. Can we go through it? I see that the scores are much higher than last week. Right? Okay, let's go through it. Everybody submitted? And then the few of you that are off camera, come on back on. Thank you. LaShawna, you still working on it? Okay. Did it make more sense to do it this way?
Yes, it did.
Yeah, because we had the opportunity to actually present examples from the content and all that.
Great,
Yeah.
great. All right, I'm gonna start going through it. Let me share my screen. Okay, where's my quiz? Okay. Question number 1. Now, you guys, I don't know if it tells you which ones you got wrong, but you should be able to figure it out as we go through it. Okay. What should the home health nurse anticipate about the clients in a very rural community? Did you guys pick?
Complex chronic illness.
Anybody have a different answer than A? I mean, actually, we talked about the other answers there. They don't, it's the opposite. They don't have employer provided insurance. They'll be more likely to have environmental exposures. And most of them will not have adequate access to doctors. Right? Okay. Question number 2. The nurse is developing a primary prevention program for members of the rural community. Primary. Which intervention is appropriate?
Number 2.
B.
Okay. Why is B primary?
It's prevention.
Is prevention.
What would
Like-
A, yep, what would A be?
Secondary.
Secondary.
Secondary,
Why secondary?
because it's like to
Screening.
prevent something that could lead to a disease.
Yep.
Screening.
Screening.
Because it's to screen for if something's already
Right.
happened. So if it
Yep.
comes up, it's dealing with something that's already there.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Thanks, Rachel. What is C?
Veterinary.
Tertiary,
Share.
Why?
because they already have the diagnosis of diabetes, and these are
Yep.
just complications that can be related to diabetes.
And what would D be?
Secondary.
Secondary.
Because
It's a blood pressure
Screening.
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 It's a screening.
Number 3, migrant farm worker presents to the migrant outreach clinic complaining of bilateral eye irritation, throat irritation, and cough. Which nursing intervention is appropriate?
B.
B.
What are you guys picking?
Yeah, it's the pesticide one.
Remember, we talked about the most important, the biggest risk to migrant farm workers is exposure to pesticides. And remember that little paragraph I highlighted in your notes?
That really helps.
And I said, please know what pesticide exposures are, or what a client would present with. And that's what they would present with. Eye irritation, throat irritation, maybe a cough. Okay. Number 4, during a home visit, the nurse notes that a migrant farm worker family is living in a small house with several other families. Which nursing assessment is a priority? What's the key
PV.
word? What's the key word in that question?
Priority.
Several families.
Nope,
Mhm.
that's part of the information, but what's the key word?
Farm
Priority.
worker.
Priority.
Priority.
Migrant farm worker.
It's the priority. What is a priority?
Oh,
What's the most important?
PV screen.
And
Migrants with immunizations and stuff in a small house.
yep, so the answer is D, right?
Mhm.
As we talked about that, one of the risk factors of living in close quarters with several other families is at risk for TB. Okay. Which statement reflects the impact of income, so poverty, on health outcomes? What's the right
low
answer?
Low income.
C.
income.
C,
B,
C,
C.
C.
C,
C.
right. We just talked about that. Living in poverty increases the risk of chronic illness. Why? Lack of access.
Insurance.
Lack of insurance,
Resources.
underinsured, no insurance, lack of access,
Transportation.
transportation. And so if they're not getting access to primary and
Educate.
secondary care, by the time they show up to see us, they're going to be at a more advanced stage of whatever they have going on,
Mhm.
right? What should the nurse anticipate for a family living just above the federally defined poverty line?
I
Mm,
thought
A.
A.
What you guys
about with
put?
paychecks, all of us living 2 paychecks away from poverty.
So are you saying A?
Yes, ma'am.
Mhm. I need to probably change this question for next term. But A is the correct answer. Right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
Only because I think B is a little, I mean, if you are at the poverty line or slightly above it, A is still going to apply, right?
Mhm.
Right. Number 7, which client is at the highest risk for adverse health outcomes related to poverty?
It's gonna be the youngest client.
Okay. And
It's
why is it
A.
A? Okay, so a 15-month-old with no medical history, that's a problem.
Mhm. No
And
immunizations.
I like what somebody said, which is it's going to be your youngest client.
Mhm.
Because as we just reviewed, children living in poverty are the highest risk group. Right?
Mhm. Because they can't take care of themselves.
Exactly. Number 8, which would the school nurse expect for an impoverished adolescent?
B.
Everybody agree? Everything else is the opposite. There's an increased risk of unintended pregnancy. They don't typically have good adaptive coping mechanisms. They have decreased attendance, right? And we talked about 3 times impoverished adolescents are 3 times at risk for dropping out of school. Which client is at the highest risk for homelessness?
It's gonna be the veterans,
Why?
mental issues,
That's one, but what?
income.
And they live alone.
And they live alone. Okay, everybody else is living with somebody.
Mhm.
Okay, adolescents living with a supportive adolescents with substance abuse has a supportive family. The adult with
Mhm.
schizophrenia is living in a group home, so somebody's
Mhm.
monitoring that.
Mhm.
Okay, the veteran with PTSD and living alone is of big concern.
Mhm.
Then number 10, the nurse is working in an outreach clinic and a homeless shelter. which clients should be prioritized?
I know it's A, but I picked B, and the reason for picking that was I was thinking sepsis, more on the lines of like an infection.
Yeah,
Mhm.
I did the same thing.
It's
Mhm.
A because A is signs of tuberculosis and it could pass to
Right.
everybody else.
That's exactly
Yeah,
right.
but I mean, but the ulcer is already there, and it's there. And then, I mean,
But TB is gonna kill everybody there.
it's
Yeah,
got
you
pro.
decrease
I was just,
population spread.
hmm,
You're trying to contain it, decrease the spread.
And think about it. What's the important word in this question?
Prioritize.
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 yes, okay, all right. That's
Right?
ma'am.
Prioritize. You guys, please be careful with these questions on the exam. There's a lot of priority questions.
Okay,
Okay. So yes, worsening foot ulcer with purulent drainage is of a concern. It's potentially a sign of an infection.
mhm,
Okay. But complaints of night sweats and unexplained weight loss is much more important to sort out because of the environment they're living in and the increased risks for TB exposure.
I was
Right, so-
thinking on the lines of menopause with sweats at night.
Well, menopause, sure, but a homeless shelter. What did we just talk about with the homeless population?
Yeah.
Much
understand what you're
higher
saying.
risk, much higher
diseases.
risk for
For
TB
the- yes.
exposure.
Yes, ma'am.
Right,
I
so you
was just-
got, this is a really good example, this question of, Pamela, think about it.
Mhm.
Let's say you come up to this question and two of the answers look like they could be correct, A and B. My suggestion
Mhm.
would be to go back and reread the question in case you
Okay.
missed an important word or a cue word. And in
Okay.
this case, it would have been prioritized. And
Okay.
since this is a homeless question,
Mhm.
what do we associate as an increased risk for homeless? TB.
Mhm. Immunization, yeah, TB and stuff
TB.
like that. Yes, ma'am.
Make sense? So that's a clue to all of
I
you
understand.
guys.
Yes, ma'am.
That's a clue to all of you guys, just in general. If you come across questions on the exam that, I don't know, all of them look like they could be right, or two of them look like they could be right, but there's only one right answer, please go back and reread the question.
Okay.
Okay?
Yes, ma'am.
All right. Let's do, I'm hoping I can do this. I'm hoping I can do this. I'm hoping this works. I am copying this link address into the chat. So you guys pull up that link. Let's see if this works. I don't know if it's going, I'm not tech savvy, but I'm gonna try. Okay. I need to go back to share my screen. Do you guys know how to do a Jamboard?
I never heard of that. I'm sorry.
Okay. I'm gonna see if I can pull this off, you guys. Hang on. Can you see my screen?
Yes, ma'am.
Did you guys pull this up?
No, it's like an app you gotta get.
What?
What is that?
The app in the app store.
All right, can you guys see my screen?
Yes.
Have you guys pulled up the app, pulled up the link?
Yes.
Does it look like my screen?
Yes, it does.
No.
No?
Mine
No.
doesn't.
Nicole,
Hmm?
do you know Jamboard?
I don't know what that is, but
Okay.
I see you moving the little test box around.
Okay, see this thing over here? It's a sticky note. Let's see if this works. Otherwise, we can just free ask it. But the way this works is you're supposed to take a sticky note, which is here. Name 3 factors that make rural residents vulnerable. Okay, so there's my sticky note. I'm going to say transportation. And I'm going to save it, and it's going to jump into our sticky note, into
Okay.
our question.
Yeah, it
Can
says
you-
transportation, and then I see on the other one, it says lack of transportation.
Okay, so somebody put that in there. Right. So, okay, so it does work. So take, you guys take,
I did.
what?
I did. Click when you're adding your answers, click on the 3 dots at the top and hit edit, and then you put your answers in.
Wait, what did you say? Up here?
No, right at the top of that little yellow box, the
You know,
tree, there's a circle where the 3 dots comes up.
Here?
let me try it.
Where do you find that? Tell me again.
That little box, when it comes up, when you just,
Here?
go onto the page, that, see you have a, I see you have a pink one now. When the box comes up, there are 3 dots on there in a circle. You click on it and it gives you options of editing or whatever that is. And then you hit edit and type your answer in. That's what I did
Oh,
to get it.
shoot. What did I just do? I'm not. Okay,
So when I
I'm
clicked
staying
edit,
here.
See,
Oh.
someone did it. Yep.
And I'm just gonna move it down. Name 3 factors that make rural residents vulnerable to health problems. Wouldn't adequate insurance be lack of adequate insurance? Whoever put that in there? Right? What makes them vulnerable? Lack of insurance. What else do we just talk about? You guys add stuff in there. Let's see what you guys put in there. Lack of knowledge, good.
mm,
Lack of education, good. Can you guys all see these things getting added in here? Hazardous work environment. Lack of education. Lack of health screening, lack of wanting to get preventative care, lack of specialists. Absolutely. What else? What about cultural issues? Language barriers. I'll add in cultural. What else? If you guys put in there, poor nutrition, yep.
Mm.
Okay, let's go to the next one. Good. Name 3 illnesses more likely to occur in rural adults. Remember, I'll give you a hint. They are very much likely to have chronic conditions. And that was in your notes.
Parkinson's.
Put it in your sticky note.
I can't get in it.
Oh, okay.
I don't see the new one.
Oh, you
Parkinson's.
don't see the page that says name 3 illnesses more likely to occur? Does anybody see
Up at the
it?
top, there's slides and you have to hit the little arrow to go to the next slide, up at the very top.
Oh, everybody has to hit the
Like on the bar with the sign in.
Do, what do we have to do?
There's up at the very top between the sign in and where it says
Right
withdrew
here?
PN. Yeah, yep. And you
Yep.
go to the next.
Oh, so
Oh,
everybody has to do it.
Okay, I
Okay.
see it.
Substance abuse, malnutrition. Excellent. Look at you guys. Hypertension, depression, diabetes. Yep. Great. Let's go to the next one. Everybody switch to slide 3. What are some high-risk industries in rural populations and why are they high risk? You could just name the industries and then just tell me why. Why is mining high risk?
The fumes.
Injury and cancer from the or from the dust.
Yeah, pesticides.
The chemicals.
Yeah. Agriculture, good. Forestry was one of them. Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, good. Everybody go to slide number 4. Symptoms of acute and chronic pesticide exposure. You guys just had this question.
Confusion.
Put it in there.
I can't put this postage stickers on.
Oh,
them.
I see what you're saying. Okay, yep. Bilateral, there were 3 of them in your quiz question. Bilateral eye irritation,
Mhm.
cough, and what was the other one? Throat
Eye
irritation.
irritant. Mhm.
Remember? Bilateral eye irritation, throat irritation, and cough. And birth,
Cough,
yep, potential birth defects. Excellent. Okay, go to slide 5. What is a migrant farm worker and what is their job in the US?
Come and go.
Yep.
Seasonal workers.
Seasonal. Yep. And what is their job?
It all depends. They come here and work and provide for their family.
Well, one of the things we talked
That's
about in our
all.
notes is that the agriculture, there you go, is they work on farms,
Construction.
that construction, but could be construction, but one of the things we talked about in our notes is
Mhm. The farm.
them working on the farms. They're the ones who get our food to our markets, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Good job. Excellent job, guys. Next one. Which federal law provides funds for the healthcare and what government support do they qualify?
The act.
That was the migrant, what was it? The Migrant Farm Act. One of the things to remember though, and I didn't cover this in the notes, and it may be in your study guide, but migrants are, they are provided funds for healthcare, but as far as other services like WIC, and they are not qualified for that. Do you guys know that?
No.
Yeah, they're not. There's very little services that they do qualify for. So if you get asked a question about, migrant workers what doesn't a migrant worker qualify for, or what do they qualify? Be careful, because federal law provides them with health care. But as far as the other, typical resources, I'm thinking about WIC, they're not eligible for that.
What about dental care?
Nope. Well,
Okay.
if that comes as part of their healthcare package.
Because I always thought health was separate from dental.
Yeah. So you need to make the assumption that the Migrant Health Act provides funds for their health care. Okay, but that's it.
What about food stamps?
Mm-mm,
No.
nope.
You have to have a social security card for them.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Yeah. Right. Okay, go to number 7. Name 3 illnesses migrant farm workers are at risk for. I'm gonna add one. Oh, it's just gonna add in TB,
I think that's
cancer.
besides Cancer, yeah.
Yeah. Depression. Diabetes, Parkinson's.
Hypertension.
Yep. Excellent. Great. All right, go to number 8. Name a secondary prevention community nurses screen for in migrant farm workers. Secondary. So you have to think, what are they at risk for? TB, primary one. Yep.
I know you said pap smears, get their screenings and pap smears.
Sure. But think of what's
Cause I
pap
see a
smear.
lot of,
Sure.
a lot of them be pregnant when they come or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
They in that close
Maybe screening for
quarters.
STDs,
Mm-hmm,
right?
mm-hmm. Alcoholism.
Alcoholism, mental health, depression. Okay, so those are all secondary. Screening. Okay, jump to number 9. Name 3 factors that lead to poverty. Yep. Education or lack of, losing your job, unemployment, job loss. Yep. What else? Losing your home.
Shelter.
What? Illness, big one. Losing your family. Yeah. Homelessness. Yeah. Bankruptcy. Okay, jump to number 10. 3 factors that lead to teen pregnancy. Lack of
Unprotected sex.
Yep. Lack of sexual education. Yep. Unprotected sex. One parent homes, latchkey kids, no protection.
Being rebellious, sneaking out and doing things like that.
Yeah, poverty, big one.
Drugs.
Poverty. Yep. No birth control.
Mhm.
Yep. Okay, number 11. Go to number 11. What health problems are more common in the homeless population? TB for sure.
'Cause I want to hear the question.
Oh, sorry. What health problems are more common in the homeless population?
Okay.
STDs, HIV, AIDS, TB, chronic
Okay.
diseases, cirrhosis, mental health, hypertension,
PTSD.
COPD. Yep, what?
PTSD.
PTSD. Yep. Number 12. This is on your study guide. What's the definition of resilience?
Resilience.
What's resilience?
Yeah, we had that last week. Resilience is
To overcome,
to
To
not give up.
overcome your situation, yeah.
never lose hope. Your ability to fight illness.
It's like tenacity.
Tenacity, there you go. Never give up.
Mhm.
How is it achieved? How can we, let me ask it a different way. How can we as nurses help our clients to become more resilient? Because when you exactly encourage, educate, because it is fact that the more resilient you are, the better equipped you are to make better decisions. Right?
Make sure they understand, just have them repeat it back to you or show you something or whatever.
Yeah.
Example.
One of our roles as a nurse is to increase the resilience in our clients. If we can increase the resilience in our clients, they become better educated to maybe not get caught up in the cycle of chronic illness or alcohol abuse or drug abuse, right? We're trying to give them tools to cope, educating them, helping them learn coping skills.
And
How is
teach
it-
them how to avoid it. I'm sorry. Teach them
Exactly.
how to avoid things.
Exactly.
Mhm.
Exactly. Excellent. Exactly. All right, scoot to number 13. Nothing there. 14, there's nothing there. Okay. Anybody ever done a Jamboard before?
No, but I like it.
Did you like it?
Yeah,
I like that. That was nice.
And again, it's just reinforcement.
Can we go back and see the questions again later on?
I don't know.
Oh.
You should be able to.
You can always see it in the video.
Oh yeah,
You're right.
yeah. In the recording. Yeah. Good job, you guys. Good job. Any questions? I think this was a very productive class. Hugh?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. I really enjoyed everybody's participation. I love that. Love it, love it. So I should be asking Dr. Kershaw to do jam boards every week. Or to put together jam boards. She's really good at that. Professor Ford she likes to do Kahoots. I'm kind of, Kahoots for me is, I'm not into the competition and all that. If I have a Kahoots link, like in my RN section, I will just send them the link to the Kahoots and they can do it at their leisure. That's as far as Kahoot. I mean, I actually like the Jamboard. Okay. So that's all I have for today. Does anybody have any questions?
Do you have the link to, because I had asked Kershaw for her link to go and listen to like her class, but she said I needed to pull it up in Outlook and I wasn't able to pull it up or go on YouTube.
Yeah, it's on YouTube under her name.
Just put Marion Kershaw.
Yeah, you could like subscribe to her her channel.
Now, Timu, you can email her and ask her for her recording link if you would like. I know that Professor, you
I
already
did.
did.
She sent me like told me to go to Outlook, but when I tried to click on it, I couldn't get it. And then she told me to go on to YouTube. So I pulled up her name in community-based nursing, but I didn't.
Timu,
see
send me an email that you want that link because I have access to all the PN classes. I'll just copy the link from her class announcement and send it to you.
Okay.
Will that help?
Yes, it will.
Sure. I'm happy to do that. I know Professor Ford sent you her link, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so again, this is exam prep week. Okay, so really take a look at that study guide. If you can do the study guide, you're going to be in the 90s on the exam. Okay, and if anybody needs any help at the end of the week, shoot me an email. We'll get together over the weekend or whenever. I'm here for you guys. Okay.
Okay.
All right. Well, good to see everybody. I hope you have a great rest of the week and reach out if you need anything. Okay.
Okay.
Okay. Talk to you later. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.